मैं ना ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਚਾਹਣਾ।
ਔਰ ਰਹਿਣ ਦੇ ਭਰਾਵਾ, ਤੂੰ ਘੋੜੀ ਚੜਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਿਆ, ਮੈਂ ਘੋੜੀ ਚੜ ਕੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ।
So whenever I'm joined by an actor who I've grown up watching or who retains a lot of sentimental value for me, it just makes the absolute atmosphere of an interview much more emotional. And I think one such actor is Jimmy Sheirgill. So, sir, first of all, a warm welcome to you on Filme Shilmy and congratulations on Tu Hovein Main Hovan.
Thank you so much, Anil. Pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely, the pleasure is all mine. So, I think the first thing that I'm going to go with and say that, the film obviously talks about a couple who are re-evaluating their relationship and they also have a child. And I think that's the sort of rom-com that the film is all about. Given the fact that you are married, you have a child, and you've reached that mature stage of life, how were you able to look at this role and at this film with a more mature lens as well?
So, what happens is when we portray characters like this, which are a very slice of life, very like could be your neighbor, could be anybody. So what really happens is in most of these cases is that it doesn't come from one particular story. It comes in pieces. Like, you might have known a friend who was going through a situation like this, and then you think about it and kind of get that emotion into the character. And then again there will be somebody else, maybe some relative or somebody who was going through an emotion like this, and then you say, okay, fine, in this particular scene I think this is how you're going to feel about the whole thing. So yes, I mean, and then there is the director and the writer who have done so much of hard work and worked so much on all these characters that they sit down and they make you, they take you through the entire scene and they say that this is how we are looking at this particular scene and everything like that. So yes, I mean, though it is a very emotional story, but it's said in a very, very light-hearted way. And that is what kind of connects you with all these characters. So if he is the kind of a guy who's a little laid back and ends up being late for everything, but he is somewhere a very simple guy, but what is really wrong with him is not anything that he does, but it's just the way he thinks, you know what I mean, and his thinking, because of his background or whatever, and everything like that. So there are small things like this which, kind of when you're watching the story, when you're watching the film, you say that, oh, I can connect. So that's why I say that everybody who goes and watches this film is going to take back something. They're going to take something back home. Because, the elders, like if we talk about our mother, father, elders, grandfather, grandmother, they would probably fight in the morning, and by the evening, they would patch up and they would be absolutely back to normal, because somewhere in the back of their heads, there was this thing for how is it going to affect our children?
Yeah.
So they would compromise everywhere just to make sure that their children, they don't, nothing happens to their children in terms of like, oh my God, we're seeing a broken household or something like that. Whereas the newer generation, for small things, they can make it into a big deal and say that we need to go our separate ways because we are not being able to live together or whatever. And then there is this newer generation, which is, I mean, they love each other, but then they're scared of commitment because they've seen so many marriages fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
So they are scared of commitment, right? And then there is the children, like in the story, you will see that we have 2 kids. So those children, the question is, when they grow up, what is their thinking going to be like? I mean, when they come to a stage where they have to get married, what are they going to feel? Are they even going to go in for something like that or whatever? So these are small, small questions that the film does ask. But yes, I mean, emotional story said in a very light-hearted way, in a very family way. So whether it's the elders that we are talking about in the film, or it's the children, or it's us guys, or it's the younger couple, it's all somewhere going to connect with you when you watch it.
Sure, very, very beautifully put. And I think the fact for you, you actually got to explore Birmingham for as a city. You weren't just there for just shooting. You actually got to explore the city a lot more. I think in this film, and I remember reading something, and you did say that that was a khasiyat of this experience of you doing this movie, and I think that's wonderful. But when it comes to NRI stories, I mean, it's not just Punjabi films. I mean, even if we look at the major turning points for Hindi cinema, also NRI, I mean, like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum and all these other movies, these NRI stories have been a major magnet towards attracting global audiences towards that set Indian film. I think with Punjabi cinema, like you said, Munde UK there, and so many of these movies that have done really well have that NRI stories. I mean, even if you look back at G. Ayanu, that was also a very
Yeah.
film that was very drenched in the whole NRI thing. But at a time like this, Jimmy, so where I feel Indian cinema अब एक हो चुका है, and people are wanting वो जो Indianness जो है एक story में, they want that Indianness, they want that rootedness. But at a time, since we've had great NRI stories which are also rooted, what do you think is the correct method for filmmakers now to merge the two worlds of the West and Indian lifestyles together? What would you say is that correct balance? And do you feel Tu Hovein Main Hovan has that correct balance as well?
I think the most important thing for me, when somebody comes up to me and says that, we are planning to shoot the story in UK, if I feel that this story can be based in India or it can be based anywhere else, I would say why London? Because it's not, see, as an actor, I'll tell you, it's not a very comfortable thing to go there. See, we have our comfort level over here when we shoot films in India, that everything is very set, like the timing of shooting, the everything, very pretty much like the comfort level that you have with all the paraphernalia that comes with your shooting, your vanity vans, you have your time, you can sit down peacefully all alone in your vanity van. Nobody disturbs you. Go through the scene, this thing. When we shoot abroad, it's like, depending on the location, if you're shooting in the streets, there is, you got to probably get a room close by and just change quickly and then come down, and then you're the whole day you're like, in the street filming. You got to finish your work within that much time and everything like that. So it is hectic. It is quite hectic when you're shooting abroad. But yes, if a story demands that you shoot abroad somewhere, like this story is, it cannot be made in India. It has to be made over there because these characters, the setting, the story, everything is from there. If that place is taken out, then there is no conflict.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I mean? So if we take, for instance, if we take the location that is UK of that thing, then and over here in, say, India somewhere or whatever, there is no cause it's over there in the UK. You know what I mean? And then coming back to the point that yes, Birmingham, I used to come to Birmingham for my promotions so many times, but I never got to explore the place. And I used to like probably come in the morning and drive back to London in the evening, or if I came in the afternoon and we had half a day of promotions, and then just spend one night over there in some hotel, and then next morning finish the rest of the thing, and then you drive back. So you never really got a chance to explore the place. But this time, when I was there for almost a month and I saw the place, firstly, I found one thing really nice is that every location was about 20 minutes to half an hour away from the hotel, which is saving so much of time Otherwise, if you're shooting the same thing in central London or something like that, and your unit is coming from Heathrow side, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I would finish a scene in that much time. You know what I mean?
True, yeah.
And then there were these virgin locations. There were these locations in Birmingham which had not been used before. There were these beautiful places wherever we shot, the strawberry farm, the this, the that, the locations which had not been used before. So yes, I mean, it was great shooting over there. And I again coming back to the point, I think it is very important that if your story demands that you shoot in a UK or a USA or whatever, then it's worth it. But otherwise, if the story can be set in within India, I think it's much better to shoot it in India.
Right. And you know what? I think one thing that I must say to you, Jimmy sir, I mean, when it comes to Punjabi cinema, matlab, I mean, you're a superstar and you are a legend. If I mention your name to any Punjabi, they will literally एक आंखों में तारा जो कहते हैं ना वो चमक जाएगा उनकी आंखों में. Like that's the sort of stature you've created. And I think what I find really amazing about your journey, which we will talk about the Hindi part because there's no way I cannot talk about that. But I think the fact that you began with Mohabbatein, with Machis, sorry, and now you've obviously done Punjabi cinema and you've become such a huge legend. For you at the time when you began, because obviously it's revived a lot since you began, and you're definitely one of the key factors of that. But how do you interpret the growth that Punjabi cinema is having, and what do you think can be done better to enhance the trajectory of it?
See, it feels great, the kind of love and respect and adulation that you get from the audience, because it's not something that has happened overnight. It's something that we worked on, and we really worked hard, not really thinking as to how people will react to us doing that, but genuinely wanting to do something for Punjabi cinema. So I was busy doing my Hindi films and everything, and then suddenly Manmohan Singh ji comes up and says, there is this story, and would you want to do a Punjabi film? I said, wow, I would love to do a Punjabi film. I would love to go back home and, to Patiala and Chandigarh and be able to shoot over there and meet my old friends and relatives and family and everything like that. And that's how it all started. And then after my first film released and the kind of response it got is when I realized that, oh my God, this can be a huge industry. And that's when I decided that every year I'm going to take out about 3-4 months to do one Punjabi film, and I will give it all I have. And that's when we started shooting the film and also taking out another month or 2 months for promoting the film, because those days Facebook and all these things were barely there. So you had to go it was almost like going door to door and knocking and saying that,
Yeah.
we've started making good Punjabi films. Please come with your family and watch it. And that's how it, it just kept going on like that till 2009, 2010, when our films like Tera Mera Ki Rishta, Munde UK Day, and Main Kara De Rabba, these films released, and they started shattering all kind of box office records and everything like that. And then I realized that, okay, fine, this was my dream, that Punjabi cinema has its own stars, like, all the singers and everybody, and a busy industry and everything like that. And so, yeah, so that happened in 2010, and then finally 2011, Dharti, again doing the same thing. And then we realized that, okay, fine, now we are in a safe zone and this thing. But as of today, yes, we have a huge audience, and even if 1% of that audience worldwide, the Punjabi audience, comes in to watch a film, we will have huge box office returns. But the only thing is, we need to make some stories that can pull in all those people, you know what I mean? So we need to come up with all kinds of different stories, different concepts, different everything. Every film does not have to be a comedy, A film can be on a serious issue and yet be said in a very light-hearted way to keep you entertained and keep you glued to your your seat, and you watch and you enjoy the film and you say what you have to say and you move on. So I guess, yeah, I mean,
Sure, and I'm glad you mentioned this because I really wanted to ask you because Punjabi cinema has some amazing films. I mean, I remember watching Sufna and I was incredibly blown away by that. Even Ardas as well, for that same reason, was amazing.
yeah, yeah,
Last year, I watched a film called Ad Chandni Raat. I think it was an independent film, but it's a very serious film, but so beautifully
yeah.
done. So that goes to show that this industry has some very gifted filmmakers and gifted artists. Why is it that we're seeing an influx of comedies and the sort of pinned romance that goes on and the rom-coms that we've seen? Why do you think there's been an influx in that? And what do you feel like you can perhaps do? Being a huge star yourself, can perhaps change that narrative a little bit. What do you think needs to be done?
See, I keep experimenting. I've gone into the Dharti zone after Mail Kara De Rabba became such a huge blockbuster and, shattered all the box office records and everything like that. Everybody said, make another film like that or make Mail Kara De Rabba 2 and all that, whatever. I know it would have been uh, uh, kind of a beneficial thing for all of us to make the second part. But then I went ahead and made something like a Dharti because I felt that, you know, we have to try and come up with different stuff.
Yes.
Nobody else will do that. So we made something like a Dharti, and which again, all of a sudden, because at that point of time, we felt that we had somehow managed over a period of time to get in the families, the children, this thing. The elders were something all the way to 2010. We still felt were not coming in like, the way we wanted them to come in. So we said, what can we do to get them into our Punjabi films? And that is when we thought of a political film.
Right.
So we thought of a political thriller. And that's how we cracked it, because we knew that now they will come, because every elder in our family is interested in politics.
Yeah,
And
true.
that is when they started coming in. And our idea was to just get them into the theaters once to show them on what level we shoot our Punjabi films. And it happened with Dhati. And then onwards, I mean, I kept experimenting with things. I did Sharik, which again was based on a Sharik Ke Bazi, De Utte Badi Si. And then Sharik 2 also, like that. Then again, this Tu Hovein Main Hovan has a solid emotional topic attached to it, which is the part of every household. And you come out and you see people's reactions, what they're saying. They're saying that it's a must watch for everybody from the family, because it just entertains you, but at the same time gives you a very nice message.
Yeah.
And so I think from my side, I keep doing that. And I keep saying, I mean, people keep asking me when I go back to Punjab for any kind of promotions or whatever, or otherwise also, they keep up, why not more Punjabi films? I said, get me more interesting subjects, get me some interesting stories and all that, whatever. And I will do it, because I don't do those films for money. I do them for passion. And yeah, I mean, you get me a good story, you get me something different, I will do it. Why not?
Right. And I must say your journey trajectory is so interesting. I mean, my earliest memory of you was actually Machis. I remember you in Chappa Chappa Charka Chale, and that was I still remember that even that you were playing a bit of a slightly darker shade of a character in that film. There was a twinkle in your eye that you had back then. And I think every time I've seen you, whether it's Mohabbatein, Dil Hai Tumhara, Tanu Weds Manu, any of the films that you've done, there's always been this innocence that you bring to the characters you play, even if there is a slight negative strand to them. So, Jimmy, even when I'm speaking to you, I feel like there's a very pure heartedness that you have as a person. Where do you think that innocence has come from?
I can't really say. It must have been from my mother, yeah, from my parents, I guess.
Right.
That whatever we've tried to do till now, every single role, I've never thought of it as this is a small role or this is a lengthy role or this is the main role or this is a negative role. I've just tried to do it with all the sincerity that I have, and yeah, and I always look at every particular film as uh, you know, I want to take back something from each film. I want to come back and I just say that, what have I learned from this particular project?
Mhm.
If Even if it's a bad experience, you look back and say, what have I learned? And okay, fine, you say that I have learned that I should not be working with these kind of people. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
or when it's a beautiful project, then you say that, okay, fine, this was a beautiful story. It did not work somehow, but what did I learn from this? I acted with these lovely people who I saw them performing. When I saw them performing, I said, okay, fine, this one is approaching this particular scene in this way. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that is how you just keep thinking about it in your head, and it does teach you. So for me, every project is like a learning experience.
Sure. I must say one thing though, and I know it's very humble of you the way you've kind of said that you've never looked at roles in terms of the quantity. And don't get me wrong, I love Bollywood, and I'm sure you also love Hindi cinema because that's obviously how you began your career with, and you still do some amazing work
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
But Jimmy, I think one thing that I can say is that there's been an issue because what's happened is there was always that conventional setup of what a Bollywood hero is. And I feel like what's happened is with a lot of talented actors who perhaps never got their dues back then are getting their dues now because of that awareness being created. But did you ever feel a sense of being perhaps a bit sidelined because obviously you did not fit the conventional sort of image of a hero back then? And how do you look back at your sort of Hindi career as well, or have reflect back at that career now? Do you have any regrets?
So I'll tell you, with me, what happened was that I was doing solo leads and I was doing two hero projects, all the typical song and dance and action, this, that, and all, whatever. And suddenly, um, I started doing more meteor roles. Like I just felt at that point of time that, I will doing what I'm doing right now, this dancing and songs and those kind of films and all that, whatever. I don't see myself going beyond 3, 4, 5 years. So I have to do something wherein I can, hang in here. So I have to make a mark. And I started doing films like Hasil, films like Munna Bhai M.B.B.S, later on A Wednesday, not thinking that, I need to play the lead. So any film that comes to me, which is not the lead, I'm not going to do it. And I started picking and choosing those kind of roles. Later on, Tanu Weds Manu, later on, Sahib Bibi Gangster. I said, I need roles that I feel like doing. And uh, at some point when I started doing that, a lot of people told me, are you mad? You got everything going for you. Why are you doing this to yourself and all that, whatever? It did make me insecure. Oh my God, am I doing the right thing? But today, sitting here talking to you, I think that's the best decision that I made at that point of time. Because if I kept doing what I was doing back then, you would have probably forgotten me by now.
Wow. Wow. And again, I've got to
Yeah.
ask you about that. I mean, the fact that obviously we're having this discussion and the fact that you said you would have forgotten me back then, how tough was it for you to stay strong in creating that identity, in maintaining that voice back then? Because obviously, like you said, there was no social media and all of that. So, you had to really grovel harder than perhaps we do now. Uh, so how difficult was it to maintain that voice and to maintain your own identity whilst going through this difficult time?
So I just kept picking up roles which I knew nobody else would. Like, see, when Munna Bhai M.B.B.S came to me, Zahir's role, I just said, this is amazing. I want to do this. I think it's going to be damn good doing something like this and all that, whatever, because um, and when that film released, and suddenly everybody was in all the reviews, they were talking about this character, and they were, and I felt that, okay, fine, this was an intense role. And suddenly they started feeling that, oh, no, no, he's not just a chocolate boy. I mean, he can do intense roles as well. And that's how it all started. And then Wednesday came out, and they were like, oh my God, this guy can do an angry young man also, and in a very different way. So, so from time to time, there were roles. There was Hasil, which, I mean, in the reviews, it was, we can't look at anybody else doing that particular role but this guy, because it's as if this guy was tailor made for this particular role. So kept doing films like that, and I guess that is what makes your journey. I think otherwise things can be routine.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I can also vouch for is that why you're special. I was telling you earlier about that innocence you bring to your roles, but I think also your roles also bring that gentleness. I think even to rough roles as well, because we're so used to seeing toxic masculine roles everywhere. I think even in Punjabi songs, you hear about like Munda Des, Gabru Munda, and all of that. There's a lot of you sense a bit of not just in Punjabi films but also in Hindi films also that aggression. But you presented roles which are a lot more gentle, which I think was so refreshing, is so refreshing. But I think going forward, because we're talking about mental health now amongst men, uh, how do you think Punjabi films can also show more characters, like perhaps the one that you've done in this movie, where it actually is very compassionate towards mental health and vulnerability amongst men?
See, again, coming back to Tu Hovein Main Hovan, and you're talking about this thing, it's all in the mind. It's the way this particular character has been brought up, and what his background is and everything. So his thinking is like that,
Hmm.
right? It's not really that he's going through any thing like that, but yet it's his thinking which has to change, and which you realize when you're watching him, you realize that he is a part of you, and he is reacting to situations exactly the way you would be reacting to those kind of situations. And that is what is making you connect to him, right?
Hmm.
And what then he does in the end, if that can, somehow affect you, and you will say that, oh my God, I mean, this guy, he did the right thing. He finished it. I mean, he just went ahead and said what should have been said years back,
Right,
right?
right.
So yeah, I mean, and coming back to the whole thing, I think anything that is bothering you, anything that is stressing you out, you gotta move on, lock it out of your life, just move on, because that thing is not good for you, and that is why it is affecting you mentally. So just shut it and move on.
Hmm.
I know it's tough. I know it's tough. I know it is this thing, but then you're a man. You gotta deal with things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there is an issue, to get the help, because there's obviously a lot of help out there nowadays, and I think that's very well said. But you mentioned Munna Bhai, and I'm really glad you did, because actually this year is very special as two of your milestone films, if I can say, Special Chabbi celebrates 10 years this year, and Munna Bhai, I cannot believe I'm even saying this, but celebrates 2 decades in the industry this year. I mean, when you do a film like Munna Bhai M.B.B.S, because that's become a film that's a legacy of Hindi cinema now. When you do a film like that, and it was a really surprise hit, I remember at the time, and it was just became an absolute sensation. If you could share some memories of doing that film, and how do you feel that movie has really impacted your perspective on life and dealing with hardships that come your way?
Oh, I remember when the film released, everyone was like Jadoo Ki Japti, and people took things back home. People were repeating dialogues. People were talking about the song, Seekale, Aankhon mein aankhein daal, the all that, and I mean, it was a celebration. Like everywhere you went, people were talking about Munna Bhai, whether it was America, whether it was anywhere, whether it was in India, everyone was talking about Munna Bhai. So I think that's the kind of an impact that film had on people, and it was a very happy film. I think somewhere this is what I say, that you deal with issues and everything, but you do it in a light-hearted way, and Raju is the best with that.
Right, right. Is there any particular memory on set that you remember that really sticks out to you from that film? I would love to know,
Oh, for
actually.
me, there were too many memories, but the only thing that comes to my mind immediately is the slapping scene with Sanju Baba, where I was not. I told Raju that I told you when I had been narrated the script. I told you later on also that I'm not going to be. I mean, if it was today, my reaction would have been very different. But I was very new at that point of time. I was very young, and I could never imagine uh, having to slap Sanjay Dutt and in a scene or whatever. And then, I still remember Arshad came to me. I was not getting out of my vanity, man. And then Arshad came, he sat, he said, bro, I mean, it's a film, we have to do it. And I said, no. And then Raju came, I can't this thing. And Roj Chopra he started talking to me. He said, we have to do it. I said, but I told them earlier, they should have said it that time. I wouldn't have done it, you know. Finally, Sanju Baba comes. And then I think he finally convinced me because he said it in two simple words. He said to me, this film is everything to me. And this slap is the turning point for my character in this film. So just do it for me.
Wow.
As I said, yeah, I cannot take away somebody's performance. And I went ahead and did it. Obviously, today, I mean, you worked on so many films and everything. You understand what scenes are all about. I was very young at that point in time. I was very new in this industry. So, and I had too much of respect for Sanju Baba. So I could never really think of slapping him at that point of time. So that memory will always linger on in my mind.
That's incredible. That is so wonderful. And it's interesting because even Special Chabbis, I think Anupam sir had recently done a tweet to Akshay Kumar and said that, oh, we should do a sequel to Special Chabbis. So imagine if that would be so cool if you guys actually got together as well. I'm sure for you on that film as well, there must have been so many amazing memories as well, with working some of the actors, which I'm sure you have already done before. That must have been a great experience for you as well, right? Special Chabbis. I mean,
Oh
anything
yes,
particular?
amazing. It's always fun working with Neeraj, and uh, that film again was so much of fun because you know performing each scene where you have to make sure that you don't give away anything because there is a turning point coming in the pre-climax. So everything had to be done so genuinely, yet like whatever. And so half the time, even though you always like there. Oh my God, I hope I don't do this so correctly that it looks like whatever. But it has to be subtle. It has to be a cop, but it should not be a cop because in the end there's a turning point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was amazing. It's great fun.
No, wonderful. But I think, Jimmy, so on a final note, we've spoken a lot about life. We've spoken about, the way we view stories and how films like Tu Hovein Main Hovan is very relevant to our society today. But I think going forward now, what do you think will be the guiding force again? You always said that you've always been keen on exploring yourself and, trying to consistently do work which changes the perception. But what would you think will be the real guiding force now, I think, going forward in future works now?
So see, right now, I think in terms of my films, I'm enjoying this phase right now because I'm doing a lot of, not that I wasn't doing different kind of stuff earlier, but more interesting, more challenging. So that is there. And then as far as the Punjabi films are concerned, there is some interesting stories that are being written right now, which we are going to be working on soon. Let's see which one we start first. And the guiding force for anybody is, I think, that the story is the most important thing. I think once you have a good story, you can't really go wrong with things. So you have to make sure that you take your time and crack a good story and then tell it nicely. That is very important as well. So you've got to crack a good story and then tell it nicely. Take your time, don't be in a hurry and everything. And to all the youngsters that are coming in and when they ask me, well, we want to come into this industry, how can you guide us? So I always say, first learn filmmaking and come. Yeah, that's the most important thing. Learn about filmmaking. Because today everything is about making reels, and then something hits like a few million and then you feel that you're the best filmmaker. That's not the way life is. We lose cinema then. Cinema is about knowing the craft, and it's very important to know the craft before you step into it. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And of course, influencers, of course, I mean, that's an art in itself, but I think you're right. When it does come to filmmaking, it does require that expertise knowledge because you need to know what you're doing. And I think there's no one better than other
You
than,
have to
huh?
you have to know that when you watch it on the big screen, you have to know how this is going to look when you watch it on the big screen. On the small phone, we can do things and it can look good and all that, whatever. But a big screen, that is cinema. So it's very important to know your craft to make sure that whatever you're making looks good on that real big, huge mother of a screen. And that is cinema. So it's important to know cinema before you get into it.
Very, very well said. Jimmy, sir, it's been such an honor and such a privilege to have you on Filme Shilmy. Honestly, it was so wonderful through the conversations and the anecdotes. It really took me a trip down memory lane and then brought me back to the present life of Tu Hovein Main Hovan. So firstly, a huge thank you for joining me on Filme Shilmy. It was such a delight to have you.
Thank you so much, Anuj. It's been a pleasure. I'll speak
Thank
to you
you.
soon.
Thank you, sir.